I'm trying to think how I want to start this, if I want to start with series or not. So, okay, let's start. We'll start kind of in a series way. And first, we'll start with African American lives. Now, for anyone who is unfamiliar with African American lives, this is the predecessor to Finding Your Roots. This was the first Henry Louis Gates Jr. based, or Henry Louis Gates Jr. genealogy based TV show through PBS. And it was focused only on African Americans. I think Oprah was on it, Oprah was on it. Uh, Whoopi Goldberg. I think Chris Rock was on it. I'm trying to remember who else. I think was that the one Martin or not Martin Morgan Freeman was on. It might have been that one or the next one, but this was the original one. And instead of doing it where they do it now, where it's like one or two celebrities per episode and it's an hour-long episode, it was a 4-episode series. I think each episode was an hour long, and each episode would focus on a different era for all of the guests. And so it was kind of a really interesting way to look at it versus the way they do it today. And I think, let's see, we're not gonna watch it. Obviously, I can't. Actually, it's probably good that I'm not gonna have the audio on there. But there are some episodes that you can watch through. Oh, of course, I wasn't sharing it in the proper way. Let's share this properly. So I don't know if you can see all of them, if they're all available. I guess they all are. Or wait, no, this is just one episode, African American. Oh yeah, so there was 2 of them actually. Yeah, there's African American Lives and African American Lives 2. And so they had each episode that you're seeing broken down. So there was The Past is Another Country, then We Come from People, then Away Out of No Way, and then The Road Home. Those were the 4 episodes of the second one. And it's just the one. They don't have, I'm the one that made this. Yeah, so I didn't upload both. So we'll have to represent both in this. But there was a 1 and a 2. Chris Rock was on it. Yeah, so this was honest. I mean, this was really, really good. Highly, highly recommend watching it. I wonder if it is available through PBS. I find it's odd that PBS has a lot of stuff that you just can't watch. Like even Finding Your Roots, I actually pay for the PBS donation thing, which gives you the PBS Compass access or whatever it's called. I forgot. Oh, you can apparently watch it on Amazon Prime Video. So if you have Prime, you can, I think, go watch African American Lives. But yeah, like I even though I pay for the, like, I think you can't watch like a lot of the first 7 or 8 seasons of Finding Your Roots or something ridiculous. It's kind of annoying, and yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Okay, it is on Amazon Prime. So yeah. All right. So actually, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about when I did the first tier ranking, and I kind of had a set of criteria that I was looking for to kind of help rank it. Because when I did that ranking, I didn't want to necessarily rank it in terms of how good each episode or website was. It was more of how much I use it, really. Because with some of these TV shows at the same time, I've seen some of them, especially after going through this, but there are some that I haven't even seen, which there is a never saw option. So I don't know. Trying to think of criteria to use. Obviously, enjoyability, but I don't know. I guess I'll just kind of wing it. We won't use criteria. So with African American Lives 1 and 2, I did really enjoy it, and I liked how they did the episodes where it was one single episode covering all of the guests, but focusing on a singular aspect that affects them all. And by doing that in the narrative way that they did, it makes it really interesting because you get a much wider range of a view of a certain time period through these family trees. Because one thing that I find with genealogy is that it brings out how nuanced history truly was, especially because it shows often that people were outliers in the way that we would think of people back in those times or in those circumstances or whatever. So it's just, it gives it a really interesting twist to see that. I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since I've seen them. I think these ones did use DNA, but this was when DNA was really in its infancy and autosomal DNA wasn't even really a thing. It was basically just Y DNA. And so with Y DNA, they might not, I don't even know if they had mitochondrial DNA at that time, but they were using that site African Ancestry DNA. Is that it? Yeah, that's right. Which in a recent stream, I talked about this site because Shannon Christmas, who is a very well-respected, well-known genetic genealogist who specializes in African American ancestry, talks about some of the issues with African ancestry. And I think it's even, right here. Let's see if we can increase that. So he even mentions Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. misinterpreted results rank among the most disconcerting example of African ancestry's low quality analysis. African ancestry's Rick Kittles told Professor Gates his Y's DNA signature was Egyptian. However, more comprehensive Y DNA testing revealed Professor Gates had the same Y DNA haplogroup as an Isle of the Nine hostages, suggesting European ancestry on his direct paternal line. This discrepancy inspired Professor Gates to partner with Family Tree DNA to start African DNA, a company that would provide higher resolution DNA testing for African Americans and include DNA relatives as the most accurate and useful data in genetic genealogy. Now, I don't know if African DNA was created. I imagine if it had been, it would have been pretty well promoted. Actually, geez, I guess it says it right here. So yeah, I'm not familiar with this. What happened with that? This article is from 2019, but just something to note. But that's kind of one thing with it is because African American Lives was the show that used that as the DNA. I don't remember how in depth they used it though. There is that part to it, that it is an older show that has a lot of outdated stuff and some stuff that some people don't really find that reliable. Like my understanding with the DNA test, the African ancestry DNA, is not necessarily that it's as much of a scam as it is that they're kind of overhyping results that have a very low confidence to them. We're always talking about confidence on a lot of these streams, especially with DNA testing and stuff like that, about how confident are you in the results. And with their DNA testing, it's like older DNA testing. They're only testing, I think, like 13 markers for Y DNA, which for anyone who does Y DNA testing, like 37 markers nowadays is considered really low. A lot of people are doing the 111 test. There used to be the 67 test, which is what I took. But then there's also the big Ys, which, 500 and 700. I don't know if both are still available. I think it's just 700. But, 13 versus 37, which is the low end, you can kind of see why it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's not really as much data. So there is that to consider. But I think overall, I'm probably going to put this in the A tier, especially because it's such a major predecessor to a lot of the big shows that came around. And in my opinion, these shows all three of the Henry Louis Gates Jr. series, which we'll get into the next two in a second. But those were the ones that I would credit as the most inspiring for me to really dive into genealogy even deeper than I already had been. Now as I talk about it, I think I'm going to put it in B tier. It is a really good show. I think I'm going to move it just to B tier, just in the sense of that it is older. There is that sense to it that it's not necessarily outdated data, but there's a lot of stuff to it that maybe isn't really as amazing nowadays.